Great. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. I know that we're rapidly closing in on the end of the day, but stay with me for a few minutes. My name is Steve Roest. I'm the CEO of PocDoc, CEO and co-founder. We've developed the world's first smartphone-based blood test. Just with the PocDoc app and one of our lateral flow tests, you can give yourself a fully quantified, quantitative blood test within 6 minutes. Now, I can obviously spend 10 minutes talking to you about how great we are, and believe me, I can, but I thought seeing as we're closing in on the end of the festival, we could try and make it a little bit more broader, try and do something a little bit more interesting. So the reason we started PocDoc was because we're obsessed about access. Access to healthcare, we believe, is one of the single largest challenges that we all have to face. What's the most accessible piece of technology that we all have in our pockets? Well, it's a telephone, a smartphone, and more services are being delivered, obviously, through the phone. So I thought it might be a little bit interesting to try and take a slightly different view and try and answer the question, how good a phone is our doctor? Or rather, how good a doctor is our phone? First of all, before we get into it, why is this an important question to ask? Well, it's an important question to ask because there's never been such a strain on healthcare resources, either from a demand side or from a supply side. So just a few little stats to hit you with. The satisfaction with the NHS in the UK is an all-time low. So it hit rock bottom of 36% last year, which was the worst rating since records began. There's currently 1.5 million people in the UK just waiting to get a diagnostic test done of some kind. That's without the waiting lists for operations. And the WHO estimates that by 2030, which is not that far away anymore, there will be a shortfall of 9.9 doctors and nurses in the world. And that's just in the developed world. In the developing world, there's only 7 doctors per 10,000 people in Pakistan. And in sub-Saharan Africa, it's pretty common to have a 12-hour journey to your nearest hospital. So all in all, that sets kind of the broader picture. But how can your phone help? Well, let's take a little bit of a view. Let's take a patient. Let's call him Steve. Why not? Let's do that. And he's got some issues, and he's worried about what he just wants to find out a bit more. So where does he go? He goes to his phone, he downloads some apps. What does he start with? Well, he starts with a symptom checker. Now, there are quite a few of these things around. 2 of the biggest symptom checkers in the world would be delivered by 𝐂𝐸 and Babylon. So 𝐂𝐸, they published in the BMJ that their digital AI doctor, so their version of a doctor, you put in your symptoms and it tells you what's wrong with you, they claim that it has 99% coverage of all diseases and is 70% accurate. Babylon Health, unsurprisingly, goes a little bit further. For those of you that know the way that they kind of set their stall out, they claim that their AI digital doctor actually exceeded the performance of humans. Read into that what you will. So off the back of that, poor Steve, he's figured out his symptoms, he's gone through the decision tree, and he kind of figures out maybe he needs a test of some kind, maybe he needs a diagnostic. Well, how can you do diagnostics with your phone? Well, PocDoc, for example, we've developed the world's first 5-marker lipid panel test that you can do with your smartphone. So using lateral flow and the app, you can give yourself a 5-marker lipid panel, which is the gating test for any cardiovascular disease assessment pathway in the UK and beyond. So in addition, our technology is being used by PATH to allow them to scale polio testing across Pakistan. So where they're hundreds, if not thousands of miles from a pathology lab, actually the device of 𝐉𝐸ₐ is an Android smartphone. So that's how our technology is being used. But enough about us. What about, let's say I've got a skin lesion or some problem with my skin. So 25% of all appointments in the NHS are to do with a skin problem. And there's a dramatic chronic shortfall of dermatologists in the UK that is not going to get any better. So there's a number of startups in this space, but let's focus on skin analytics. So in this game, you're either a rule-out platform, so as in, is it a melanoma, is it not a melanoma, or you're trying to crack a much harder problem, which is what skin analytics is trying to do, which is to determine what your lesion actually is. It's not rule out, it's determining what it actually is. So they claim that their dermatology AI is as good, if not better, than the standard of care that you get with any dermatologist. Now, in this space, you might have seen a couple of years ago, our friends Google, small company, startup, launched their own AI digital dermatology platform. Ironically or strangely, it's still not regulated by the FDA, but it is CE marked. And when it came out, there were a lot of investors, particularly in the VC space, that were sort of heralding the demise of skin analytics and all these other platforms because Google was basically giving it away for free. So I don't know if there's anyone from any of those platforms in the room. Happy to take any questions about it, but it's yet to happen. Skin analytics seems to be going from strength to strength. We can move away from that. We can go back to cardiac health. There's a company out of Belgium called FibraCheck. which just from putting your finger on the smartphone camera can deliver the same fidelity as a single lead ECG. So the conclusion is that there's some element of diagnostic test that can be done with the phone. But what happens after that? Say that you do get a diagnosis. How does treatment work? Well, there's actually a panel later called digital therapeutics, which I'm on, but now we're talking about digital therapeutics. So that sector's set to grow by 26% year on year up until 2030, which is pretty phenomenal. So digital therapeutics is effectively the substitution of a digital, normally delivered via an app-based solution that is equivalent, if not slightly better, according to clinical data, at solving that problem versus whatever the previous pathway was. So normally pharmaceutical. In the UK, one of the big successes in this space recently is called Sleepio, which is developed by Big Health, backed by Index Ventures, in which GPs can now prescribe, instead of prescribing melanin tablets and other sleeping aids. So in the country, though, that's making the biggest progress, I would argue, in Europe as far as digital therapeutics is concerned, is Germany. They've actually created their own framework, which is called DIGA, which is a way for actually any app can apply to become regulated as a therapeutic, to become reimbursable, even if it's downloaded by an app store. You don't actually even have to have it prescribed, which is really quite revolutionary. So all in all, our poor fellow Steve has gone through and he's had some symptoms checked, he's had some tests done, and he's gone to a treatment path. So the digital therapeutic connection to PocDoc is that we're actually working directly with pharmacies to roll out the test and actually integrate directly into their back-end prescription, so anyone with elevated cholesterol can actually be prescribed a statin in real time. It's not exactly the same as a digital therapeutic, but it does relate to this downstream concept of, okay, what's the so what after the test? So in the last few minutes before I finish, I think it's fair that we kind of wrap up and we look at the kind of other side. Obviously, for the sake of the talk, I've been deliberately myopic about the value of smartphones in terms of replacing doctors. Thank you for not throwing stuff or anything at me. But obviously there's limitations, right? So the first one is, can everyone access it? If people don't have phones, or if people don't have the right type of phone, that's going to be a problem. This obviously tracks across socioeconomic strata, this tracks across vulnerabilities, this tracks across age, and it's become more and more of an issue, and it's already an issue when you talk to the NHS about this, so in terms of accessibility. The second piece is, does it actually work? So there's no point going through one of those symptom checkers if at the end it actually isn't that accurate and it comes up with something very nonsensical. Same thing, if you're going to do a diagnostic test with your phone, how accurate is the diagnostic test? It sort of seems self-evident, but I think it's important to highlight it. The final area of concern, as far as this question is related to, is does it actually help the system? So, or does it just create junk data that GPs are going to get super frustrated about because you did a test or you did a report or you checked your symptoms and actually they're going to retest you or go back to the beginning all over again? So does it actually help? So, well, I think the conclusions probably are, or my view, obviously I'm slightly biased because what we do at PocDoc, but my view would be that your phone is a good doctor in some aspects with some limitations, predominantly through quite narrow lenses in terms of narrow uses, with limitations on the outside. However, things like demographic shifts, things like the trend data on the supply and demand restrictions and resources in the healthcare system, trends like the accelerating pace of technological development mean that the phone itself is going to become more and more relied upon to deliver healthcare services across the world. So thank you very much for your time. I'll take some questions if anyone has it. Otherwise, I'm on the digital therapeutic panel later, and I'm also co-hosting the awards later as well. So I hope to see everyone there. If anyone has any questions about PocDoc, happy to chat now or afterwards. Thank you.